Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our live broadcast tonight on Facebook. This is Tamara Clymer with Cross River Media Group, and I'm here with Tracy Sellars, the author of the brand new book, Roots Redeemed. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing great. Glad to be here with you. Of course, I had to have this out here tonight.
Of course. So what kind of day has it been? Has it been a busy day?
Well, it's been a good day, but super full. So especially yesterday and today, I would say just leading up to the book launch. So just super excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. Glad to have you here. Let's start off a little bit. Just can you introduce yourself? You've been with us, this is your third time now, so I'm sure that people are familiar with you. But for those who aren't, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into writing.
Absolutely. So my name is Tracy Sellars, and actually started writing even in elementary school, and always loved, like, grammar was my favorite class in high school, and literature and children's literature in college was my favorite. I just have always been really drawn to story. And I started writing about 10 years ago, actually probably even more like 12 years ago, and wrote for a little while and just kind of stalled out because of fear and just doubt and wondering where God would take it or if it would ever go anywhere. And then finally got down to being obedient, what he was asking me to do, started writing again. And then here I am with book number 3 with Cross River. So super exciting.
Wow. That fear is kind of a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah. It's easy to listen to. It can be a very loud voice, louder than God's silent or, precious whisper that he whispers in our ears. So.
Yeah. The enemy does have a pretty loud voice, especially when it comes to that whole, imposter syndrome kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you fought through that. So let's talk a little bit about the series.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. Okay, so book 1 was Roots Reawakened. This is the Roots Run Deep series.
Yes, Roots Run Deep. So it's a trilogy. And here's the first one. This came out in September, and this is a story about God's sovereignty and faithfulness, and kind of how sometimes it doesn't feel like he's being faithful in his sovereignty. So that was really a very personal story for me to write, and I love how the series started out with Roots Reawakened, and then a couple months after that, this was a rapid release trilogy. So Roots Revealed came next. And that is a story about forgiveness, a lot of it, and understanding God's love for us and not running from him, letting him pursue us and running towards him rather than away. And then, of course, Roots Redeemed, that just came out today. So,
all right. So tell us about Roots Redeemed.
All right.
First of all, the cover. I just have to say the cover is my favorite out of the 3 of them. I love it.
When I saw it, I was just so tickled pink about that. So one of the reasons I really like it is because the very first scene in the book is February 14th, 1899. And if you know anything about history, that was actually the Great Blizzard of 1899. It hit the East Coast. So it kind of based that on real events a little bit. And then, so she's standing in the snow, so it just totally works out perfect. So it really goes well with the book. You can tell she put a lot of heart and thought into that. Yeah. So Roots Redeemed, it's kind of given away in the title a little bit because you're going to see a story of God's redeeming forgiveness and really that adventure that we find when we are within his will. But a lot of times we can fight that. So, and then when you talk about roots, there's 2 characters in the story. One of them, she doesn't have any roots. And so she's basically trying to create those and trying to redeem herself, trying to create this family tree that she's never had. And the male main character, he's got rotten roots, and he feels like, I've just got to be a self-made man because my roots are horrible. Look at my father, look at my family history. I've got to start over. But in that process, he ends up finding the Lord and putting his roots in him instead.
Wow. That's awesome. So where did you come up with the idea of the roots? I mean, it's followed through all 3 books.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Where did that kind of come from?
Well, I was thinking about it today because I am starting to work on the next series, and I was thinking about names. And so if you look at the first book, Roots Reawakened, it's about her faith, the roots of her faith. And book 2, there's some mystery around who the real parents are. Like, she was adopted, but who's my real mom and dad? So it's like those roots get revealed. And then the third one, it's what do I do with these rotten family roots? But it all goes back to family and faith. And there is the theme of orphans and adoption throughout all three books. And so a lot of orphans, like we are spiritually, are looking for that forever family. We find that in the Lord.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite topics, actually, is orphans. And
Awesome.
Our 4 kids are all adopted, and so adoption is very near and dear to my heart. So that's awesome.
I did not know that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So sweet. I just had someone do a review today, and I don't know who it is because I don't think it had her name on it. You know, sometimes it's just Amazon customer or whatever, but she said that they were looking into foster care right now. And so this really touched her heart. And I had another gal reach out. She's an older lady, and she left reviews for all the books. She's been a great champion in this, but she said, "Oh, I don't know if you knew this, but I was adopted." And so this really spoke to me. And so it's interesting how God will use different pieces of the book. Like I remember Deb from Cross River, she said what spoke most about this book to her was that the main character, the female lead, is kind of breaking into man's world. She's an engineer in 1899, and she's working in that world, and that was just not very common. And so Deb really saw herself in that. So it's just interesting how you see yourself in different parts of the book.
Yeah, and I just love how God can take something like that and use it in our lives no matter where we're at.
Yes.
I mean, he's so good at that, obviously, in scripture, but he also uses other platforms and other things to kind of speak to us that way too, which I love.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the characters. You mentioned the female character. What's her name again?
Yeah, so her name is Amber.
Okay.
Amber Graham, and she was always told that, hey, you don't have any parents. Your mom, died during childbirth. Your dad has never been around. And so she kind of went from, foster care to just whoever would take her in for a long time. And she finally lands on the doorstep of the king's castle. And that's the orphanage that's in all 3 books. It starts in the first one. You're going to see the storyline throughout. And she realizes that she got there one day late. If she would have been there 24 hours before, there was a family that came and they adopted 3 girls, and they were all around the same age. And she realizes, I missed my chance. So for a decade, she's kind of in this like mourning period, like, if only, and there's all these questions. And so then she sees another way. I won't tell you what it is if you haven't read the book, but she sees another way to get that family that she wanted. And so she really tries to I really see a lot of Abraham and Sarah in her, just trying to, pick which parts and pieces we want rather than really just trusting God for the outcome. So she tries to kind of make her own way, as we all do. Actually, that theme is really in all 3 of the books because that's what I do.
That's what we all do.
That's what we all do. So we can all relate with that.
That's true.
And then she's got, 2 guys that she's forming relationships with in different ways, and how God works through those relationships. And then there's a lot of inventions in the book as well. And so she's working with different things. And so she's kind of a scientific mind, but at the same time has a really soft heart for people. And it's just neat to see her character journey through the story and where she ends up and how God ends up leading her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So what inspired you in writing this series? I mean, we talked about adoption, but what is it that really kind of kicked that whole idea off? And how long have you been working on this series, first of all?
Well, the first 2, I had pretty rough drafts of when I first started writing. These were the first 2 books I wrote, like a long time ago, over a decade ago. And then I just sat on them forever. And then when I finally decided, yes, Lord, I will say yes to you, then I picked them back up again, redid them many, many times. You know how it goes in the writing process. And then ended up taking the second one, Roots Revealed, to a conference that I went to. And that's where I met Cross River. And then kind of the rest is history from there. But the very first book that I wrote was Roots Reawakened. And one of the very first scenes, she loses a child. She has a miscarriage. And that was what I was going through at that time in my life. So I think that God can use fiction. He can use story. He could, like a lot of people, journal. when we write things down, a lot of times we can process them differently. I'm not a super great internal processor. I really need to write it down or speak it out loud. Like someone will say, what do you think about this? And I'm like, I don't really know. But once I start having that conversation or putting it down on paper, then all of a sudden it becomes a lot more clear to me. So I just need to say it out loud. Sometimes even when I'm by myself, I'm working on a book and I'm working on story concepts for book 4 right now. And a lot of times I'm like, okay, so if this happens, it just helps me to think better.
Sure.
So that's kind of where that began. And I realized the Lord has used fiction books in my life so in such an impactful way. I don't think fiction books should ever take the place of reading God's word and really studying it, but he has definitely used them, especially ones, and I'm sure you've read them. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, where he uses scripture in the story.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how you can be shaped by story. And I really felt the call to do that through fiction.
That's awesome.
And I've always been a very, very avid reader, but also a very picky reader. That's not a picky eater too. A picky reader, because I want to read, or I should say what I read is going to come out in my speech. It's going to be my thoughts. I'm going to live what I read. And that's the way it is for everyone, because God says that what goes into our heart comes out of our mouth and is seen in our lives. And so I want these books or anything I write to edify, to build up, to challenge, to share the gospel. And also, I just love to read for the fun of it. So I hope that these are fun for people too. And I've heard some feedback about that as well.
Yeah, they are. They definitely are. Yeah, that's one of the things, when we were looking at your manuscript, our mission statement has recently changed to that we're building, or we're producing materials, books and materials that help a woman build a battle-ready faith. And I felt like that your series really does that, help women grow their faith, become stronger in their faith, and are ready to tackle the things that life throws at you, which, obviously the women in each of your books has had some hard stuff thrown at them.
Absolutely. Yes. I feel like it's been a good match from the beginning with Cross River.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So, okay, you kind of spilled the beans. Well, let me go back. Let me just say this first, because if I don't, Deb's going to get on my case. We're doing a giveaway tonight. We're going to be giving away an e-copy of one of your books, and we'll let the winner decide which one. But if you want to be entered into the contest, leave us a comment.
Yes, and I'm going to give away a print copy.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. So we'll do a print copy and an e-copy.
We'll do 2 giveaways tonight.
That sounds great. Yeah. It sounds great. I was going to see if I could come up with some comments here. We've got, Robin says, all 3 are so good.
Thank you, Robin.
And Lisa says, Roots Redeemed was very enjoyable to read. That's awesome.
Thank you, Lisa.
And Deb says, Roots Redeemed was my favorite. So
me too.
Yeah. What is it? I think aren't authors not supposed to have a favorite?
I know. I so enjoyed writing Roots Redeemed. I mean, I just can't even tell you how much I enjoyed it. I get just such a kick sitting in front of a computer screen creating a book. Like it energizes me. Of course, it's hard work. I mean, there's thousands of hours that go into a book. I will not lie, it is super hard work, but I really enjoy it. So since I'm passionate about it, it tends to go very quickly and it's not like a drag. So yeah, I really love this book.
That's awesome. Well, it's one of my favorites, I think, too. So that's great. Lisa says, ignoring God's messages when they don't go along with our plans was a strong theme I identified with. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Was that one of your intended messages?
Did I hear you right? Ignoring God's messages?
Yeah.
And we don't want to go along with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so many times that we hear God whisper, or sometimes he even has to shout at us, and we still say, no, I actually know how to do it better. And the pride that I have sometimes, right? It's amazing how when I am humble, then I can be obedient. But I can't be obedient and prideful at the same time. Like, it just isn't possible, because in my pride, I think I know best. In my humility, I say, actually, I don't know best. God, you do. I'm going to follow your plan. But that is hard to do. Easy to say, hard to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Judy says, I'm just learning about Tracy and her book, so I'm late to the party. Judy, you're never too late.
That's right. I'm so glad you're here. That's awesome.
That's awesome. And Dustin says, I love them all. Tracy gets me every time. She's my new favorite author. Well, actually, it's Liz that's saying
It's Liz. Yes, I know Liz. So Liz was one of the winners for the Vows Written in Permanent Ink contest that I had when I did the character names. So she is Elizabeth, actually. God did that one. So she's Elizabeth in book 2 in Roots Revealed. So she's kind of the second storyline, but I love that storyline.
That's awesome. So tell us about that contest. That was one of the things I was going to ask about. You brought it up.
Yeah.
Where did the idea for that come from, and what's the response been so far?
So the idea actually came from Karen Kingsbury, really, because I've only read a few of her books, but I remember when I used to read them a long time ago that she had something called Forever in Fiction in her books. I don't know if she does it anymore, but it wasn't necessarily a contest, but it was if someone was in your life and maybe they were going through cancer, or maybe they had just been through something very tragic or traumatic, or just had a great testimony, she would take their name and put them as a character in the story. So let's say they passed away, now they are forever in fiction. And I just thought, I always had that in the back of my mind, like what a neat way to connect the reader to the story and give them just a piece of it and help them to see, wow, this was, I'm part of this. So my husband and I have a marriage ministry, Vows to Keep, and we work with a lot of couples who have a lot of really great marriage testimonies. Even if there's still a lot of stuff going on, God is working on them and they're allowing God to work in them. And a lot of what we see in these books is, I don't necessarily use the word covenant God, but that's kind of the theme, that he is not going to turn his back on us no matter what. And that's what he's called us to do in our marriages as well. So I thought, what if I ran this contest and asked people, hey, would you like to have your marriage testimony, kind of a short little, this is what God's up to in our marriage, to encourage other people. And then your first names would be the characters in the book. So the first book had 3 couples that were the winners. And then the next 2 books had 2 couples. And it was just a fun way to connect with readers. And I think a lot of authors get a little bit hung up on picking a name for their characters. Like it can be a really big thing. Like I'm starting this 4th book and it's like, I have to have placeholders. Like, it's kind of like coming up with a password. You're like, I know the whole English language, but I cannot come
up naming that first baby.
Exactly. So this is something that I don't need to, spend too much sweat equity on when I write, because I know that I'm going to run this contest again. And once in a while, you'll want someone in a story that you're writing to have a really specific name, it goes with their character, or maybe they're going to be a bad guy and that just needs to be their name, because you don't want someone. You don't
want the poor person to have the bad guy name.
Yeah, exactly. But the strong relationships in the book, to have a real life couple, that's just pretty special.
That is pretty neat. That is awesome. Yeah. Well, it was fun to watch that unfold, and the responses that you got. That was great.
Yeah, I'm going to do it again. So if anybody's watching, they want to enter. So it's coming up.
Sounds good. So you guys remember, we're doing a giveaway. We'll do one here in a little bit. So if you want a chance to win a copy of the ebook or a copy of the printed book of Roots Redeemed, be sure to leave us a leave us a comment or a question in the comment section.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Deb wants to know, how many months or years did it take you to write each book?
So the first 2, I don't know if I have a really clear answer for that. So number 1, my children were very, very small when I wrote those books. So I didn't have a set schedule like I did for the 3rd book, and that I have for this book now. So that I'm writing right now. So my 3rd book, I gave myself a very specific goal and timeline, as did Cross River. We worked together on, when should this be done by, so that it can be edited by this date, so it can be printed by this date. So I wrote from November through March this last year. And I would say over Christmas, with all the kids home from, school and just just whatever family stuff, I probably didn't write as much in December. So November, I think by the end of November, I had written, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30,000 words. And then after that, I picked back up in January and wrote through the end of March. So my goal was March 31st, and I turned it in March 31st at like 10:01 p.m. I mean, I worked down to the wire, and it still needed, of course, lots of tweaking and everything after that, which is fine. But I try to write when it doesn't have any bearing on anyone else in my family. Now, that's not always possible, but my husband works from home. I've got kids kind of in and out all the time, and I'm not a very good multitasker. I'm a terrible multitasker.
You and me both.
So I have to be super focused, like laser focused, and I have to have a lot of quiet. Unfortunately, I wish I could work with noise. But so what I would do is I would just get up at 4 or 5 in the morning and write. I did that about 5 days a week. And then Saturdays was one of those days. And Saturdays I would write for longer because I just had a little bit more leeway on Saturday mornings. So I'd write like Monday through Thursday morning, 4 to 7 or 7:30. And then I'd write on Saturday mornings. And it was kind of hard to get up that early.
How much coffee was involved?
So I am not a coffee drinker.
Oh, okay.
I know. So I try to have just a little caffeine in the morning. This morning I got up and I was like, or no, it was yesterday. I was like, it's 5 a.m. Am I allowed to have a Diet Mountain Dew at 5 a.m.?
Yes, you are.
That just doesn't seem right to me. So I think I waited a little while, but
oh my gosh, that's way too early. It's a
little early, but it's kind of like once you get into it, it just becomes old hat. Like the first few days, you're like, why am I doing this? So we have a room above our garage that we have remodeled into like a kind of like a bed and breakfast.
Oh, okay.
And so we have people stay up there sometimes, but not every weekend and not every day. So I go up there to write when I write.
Awesome.
That way I know laundry's not calling my name. The dishes aren't calling my name. This, I can really shut myself
away. The kids
away.
aren't necessarily calling your name. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where I write.
That's cool. Okay. So, well, first let's go ahead and have Deb pull a name a winner for the ebook. And, we'll let Deb take care of that, and she'll let us know in the comments who the winner is. And Tracy, can you tell us, just tell us about that writing, how you go about writing? Okay, you're sitting up there in that room above the garage. Yeah. You're sequestered. What does your writing area look like, and what kind of process do you go through? I mean, are you plotting? Are you pantsing? Are you writing, a paragraph and then editing the snot out of it?
Right.
Or are you just
That's a good question. That's a very good question. So I would love to be able to write without editing, but unfortunately, I really do love to edit. And so if I make a mistake, I work really hard to not change it, because when you stop and start constantly like that, it kind of cuts into the creativity. So I try to not edit as I go. Even this last book, I didn't put in the quotation marks in a dialogue until later, because I realized how much that was sort of holding me up. I guess, I don't know, it's just something I wanted to try and see if I could just kind of go with it. So as far as the writing space, like where I write up there, so there's kind of 3 places to sit. There's, because it's kind of like, it's got a kitchenette, it's got kind of a living room area, and it's got a bedroom. But honestly, you can picture me sitting up in the bed up there, because that's normally where I am, because we don't keep the heat on up there. And it's really, really cold in the wintertime. So when I get up there, there's a 3-sided fireplace. So I turn on the fireplace, and that's, it gets warm, but I'm underneath my covers and I'm typing. And as far as like my process, so like right now I'm working on story concepts for book 4, and I haven't actually technically started to type. So I have a notebook with page after page I kind of color code things so I can easily visually see, what I was thinking and where I'm going. And then I have like character sketches for each of the characters. And I've kind of compiled those from different areas and kind of made my own. So if you look at, kind of a typical, like character sketch, they want to know how old are they? Where do they live? Where do they
Right.
work? What's their personality? But I add a lot more into that.
Mm.
And it's just, like I say, come from different places. But one of the things I love to add in are some things from our counseling sessions. So with our marriage ministry, we counsel couples, and we're always talking about, like, what are the things that rule you? Like, what are the idols of your heart? And in a character, boy, when you know the answer to that, like, where is their allegiance? You're going to get into the story really, really quickly.
Right.
And answering those kinds of questions, like, what are they willing to sacrifice? What do they fear? That's, common one. Like, what's their superpower? Or, like, what's their kind of hidden, talent? And so in the third book, the girl's, competence or superpower was that she could drive a car. And back in 1899, that wasn't really a thing, but she had driven a couple times, and she ends up kind of saving the day because she can drive a car. So just different things like that. And then one of the things I love to include is, what does this character need to know about the character of God? Like, what do they need to either feel or know or believe or, put their trust in? Because that also plays hugely into their character arc, like where they start and where they stop is like, what do they need to discover about God's character? So
That's cool.
Yeah. And then plotter or pantser. So I've tried plotting. I've tried outlining. That doesn't work really well for me. So what I tend to do is make this pretty heavy, like a lot of notes, a lot of possibilities, and then the, pretty deep character sketches. And then from there, I figure out where I want to start. Like, what's my first scene? Why? What's the second? And then from there, I just write. I don't ever know how it's going to end. And I think not knowing how I want it to end, I mean, generally speaking, but not specifically, because I love to be surprised. And so if I already know, like, I feel like I would get really bogged down in the middle of the book. And I don't want the reader to get bogged down in the middle of the book.
Right.
I want it to be like, okay, well, what's next? Well, why'd that happen? So yeah, I don't plan it to the T.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So are you the type that'll go like on Pinterest and look up, like what the person looks like and the clothing and, scenes and stuff like that?
So I am a visual person. So I would say yes, but maybe just like a couple pictures. I don't get too into it because sometimes there's so many ideas. It's like, how do you narrow it down? So I found, on Pinterest, I've got like kind of like a storyboard or whatever, and I've got maybe someone from the back, like not their face necessarily, because I think it's nice for a reader to kind of visualize someone's face on their own, because everybody kind of has their own, idea of what a brown, haired, blue-eyed girl would look like or whatever.
Sure.
And then I use Pinterest mostly for like today I was looking at like the names of Jesus on Pinterest for this next book. Like, and I think I'm going to really use like, he's our advocate, and that she doesn't feel like she has an advocate. And why doesn't she feel like that? Well, because this happened in her life. And so that's part of what she needs to understand. And so I use more stuff like that on Pinterest.
That's neat. I like that. All right. So we got a couple more questions here. We have Deb Allard wants to know, what is your next book? Is it a different series? Is it the same series?
That's a great
Your publisher
question.
wants to know that too.
Yes. Okay. So I was on the phone with Dee Dee the other night, Dee Dee from Cross River, if people have questioned who that is. And I was talking with her about, like, I don't know, this is maybe a week or two ago. And I was like wrestling with, should I do contemporary or should I do historical? And I prayed about it for like 2 months. And I'm like, I have got to decide. And so having that conversation with her was really, really helpful to me. Good. And I started to look at some of the reviews that were coming in also for Roots Redeemed, and just realized, like, God's doing something here and I don't need to maybe reinvent the wheel. I would like to write contemporary someday. I actually have a couple already started, but I I really, really enjoy the historical romantic suspense. Like that combination for me seems to be a good one. And it seems to be something that's resonating with the readers.
Yeah.
So I am going to keep going on that.
Yay! So it's going to be part of the Roots series, or is it going to be a new series?
So I've also thought about that quite a bit. And I think that Roots Redeemed or Roots Run Deep, the trilogy, should remain its own trilogy. Okay. However, I would like to set this next, however many books it is in the next series in Waterford Cove.
Okay.
It's, a town that I already know, and I don't think a lot of character overlap will happen, but okay. I think I've already got the setting pretty well established, and it's, I think starting over would be maybe a moot point, like it maybe really wouldn't matter in the end. So if Trevor's okay with that, that's what I'd like to do.
I think that'll be fine.
That's a good question, Deb. Very good question.
Good one. Let's see. Well, first of all, I should say that our first winner is Liz Baumgartner. So congratulations, Liz. Yay. Let's see. Andy says, hey guys, I think it's really interesting that you don't put the quotation marks in. Whatever it takes to get that writing done. Right?
Yeah. You can always go back and put them in. And yeah, I read something the other day that I had written before for this contemporary series, and I had not put the quotation marks in, and I read through it, and I was like kind of wondering what I thought about that. But I think in the end, it'll be okay either way.
It'll be fine. Lori says, you can tell that the characters are richly developed.
That's cool, Lori.
That's a great compliment.
I'm glad you can see that.
Yeah. And Deb says, I love that about what character needs to know or discover about God. So awesome. Yeah, that is I think, I don't know that that's something that's really, that writers do tend to think a lot about. They might have a general idea of, in their story arc, they have to, get from point A to point B. And so in the process, they're going to learn this, but what do they need to learn, from their background? That's deep.
Yeah. That really kind of helps it carry through the whole way. And hopefully that's something that the reader would walk away with that, I've seen in some of the, reviews and testimonies that I've heard from this about, like, I shut the book and I'm still thinking, like, okay, what is God up to in my life? What have I maybe not seen, or where have I been Abraham and Sarah in this? So that's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. All right. So Deb, let's go at Deb Butterfield, who's in the background. She's not seeing her. I'm going to go ahead and let her do the drawing for the physical copy of Roots Redeemed. They all have that second R, or that R in the second, and I like which one's what order, but
yes,
I got it written down. It's Redeemed.
I know, right?
Redeemed, of course, book 3.
I know them inside and out, but I don't expect you guys to. I do have a question. When you're done with who wins this, I have a question.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Let's talk a little bit about what do your friends and family think about all of this? Because this is kind of a new thing. You've been radio personality, you've had the ministry, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're an author.
Right? Yeah. Well,
3 books all at once.
I think it really depends on your family. So my youngest daughter, she's 14, and she is like devouring these books. Like she wanted to wait until she had the physical copy of Roots Redeemed, because she'd read the other 2. And so she waited until yesterday when they came in the mail, and she has 32 pages left. So she's like eating them. So she is honestly the only one of my immediate family that has read them all the way through.
Oh my word.
Yeah. My husband
really get that.
So
my husband doesn't read any of my stuff.
I know. I take no offense. It just, my other daughter, she is 18, and she is up to her neck in college work right now. I don't even know how she's surviving. And my son, he's a boy. He's a 17-year-old boy. I don't really expect him to read a girly book. So, and then my extended family, my mom and my sisters have been reading them, which is really cool because I don't expect them to, but I love that they are. That's really awesome. Means a lot to me. And then my friends are, not all of them are readers, of course, but I've had
Uh-huh.
some that aren't readers that have like, you know what, I really don't read Christian fiction. I really don't read fiction at all. And they picked them up. And they're like, oh, you know, thank you. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know if they go buy it off of the, you know, on the Barnes and Noble shelf, but they appreciated it. But then I have a lot of friends who are readers and they're, I don't know, just grateful that they're clean fiction,
Mm,
that they
yeah.
can read them and be encouraged and get something out of them, but also just fun. I think they're fun to
Yeah.
read, and I hope there's kind of that, you know, hey, I get to read today. This is like an adventure I get to lose myself in.
Yeah.
So, because fiction is entertaining, and I hope that these are entertaining. I know there's a lot of spiritual elements to them, and a lot of, you know, God can do a lot through them, but I hope they are just fun to read. So
That's awesome. I love that how supportive your friends and family are. That's great.
it has
That
been
is
pretty
fun.
cool. Yeah.
All right. So Lorianne is the winner of the print copy of
Aw,
Roots.
yay. Okay, so
So,
Lorianne, just give Tammy your address and then she'll give it to me and then I will mail it to you.
yeah. Okay.
Cool.
So we've got Dustin or Liz. Liz
Yes.
says, I pass the books on to my mom to read. She loves them too. And I make sure she leaves reviews. That is the part that we
Yes.
couldn't love more, honestly.
Yes.
Because those reviews are so important because they help other readers discover the books, you know, and figure out if they're the right ones for them.
Yeah. And I never really realized that before, and how it makes me want to go and really be intentional about leaving reviews for other people, because even if it's just a short, you know, hey, I liked it, 4 stars. What, I mean, it doesn't even matter. It's just like that someone took the time to do that. It's huge. That's
awesome.
Great. Thank you, Liz. You're awesome.
Well, and one of the things that we do at Crossover is we let you read the first chapter for free. So if you come to our website, crossovermedia.com, you can read the first chapter of each of our books to see if that's the right book for you before you purchase it. So
I totally love that. Oh, speaking of that, this is so fun. So at my kids' school, the literature teacher asked if she could have some of the books. So she has the first 2, of course, because this one just came out today. And she did a blind book tasting. So she wrapped all these books, you know, that she had in brown paper and wrote on the front, I think it was like the first sentence or 2 of the book. And the students had to choose the book based upon the first sentence or whatever. So they had no idea genre or anything. And I just thought that was so
fun. That is cool. That is so fun.
Blind book tasting.
That is fantastic. All righty. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share today?
Well, I did have a question, and I know it's hard, you know, with the comments and stuff, but I am wondering what you guys think about the next series starting with, like, each book starting with the same word, like when it was Roots Reawakened, Roots Revealed, Roots Redeemed. Like, does that get confusing, or does that help people find the books on Amazon when they go to search for them, or help them remember, hey, maybe I don't remember the second word, but I know it can start with roots. So I'm trying to name my second series here, and I'm just wondering if you guys have any opinions about that.
All right, everybody, leave your comments in the leave your comments in the comments.
Yeah,
your ideas about that in the comments. We'd love to hear that.
Yeah. What do you think, Tammy?
You know, I think the thing I like about it is it does kind of drill home the name of the books. You're going to know each book is named Roots. The Roots is in the series name. And so I think it helps with that. You know, so much of finding a book when you go online or when you go to the library is now, what is the name of that book? It's a blue book. I remember it's blue. And I don't remember what the author's name, but it has a tree on the front. So being able to roots, it's got roots, and that helps narrow it down some. Which is great. So Lorianne says she likes the alliteration.
Okay.
So Deb says she loved it.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay. So I'm brainstorming now. So yeah, I don't know why it helps me so much to know the title of a book before I start it. It's almost like the theme, I guess. And it really, I mean, I don't have to have it. In fact, I didn't have it for the first 2. They were named something totally different. And then, you know, this got branded this way because I chose to do that. But I know it's kind of like the name of a song or the name of whatever, like it just kind of gives it the flavor. And so I'm brainstorming right now.
That's awesome.
Thank you for your feedback. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
Lisa says, if not the first word, same word should be as similar as possible for a trilogy, especially.
Yeah.
And Liz / Dustin says, it doesn't matter to me. It was good and catchy for the titles, but the material inside is what is awesome.
Thank you. That's
So
cool.
anyway. All righty. Well, I think that'll do it for this evening.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you everybody for coming. This was a fun night. I wish I could like talk with each one of you, like personally see your faces.
Yeah, someday we'll figure out how to do that. Maybe we can do that
right?
in Instagram or something like that. We can try that.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you guys. So fun.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Remember, you can find the Roots Redeemed, Roots Reawakened, Roots
Revealed.
Thank you. All on crosswordmedia.com or wherever your books are, your bookstore is. So we'll see you guys next month. We'll have another release next month. It's a biblical fiction. So this should be, it's a good one. It's really good. So lots of good stuff lately. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We'll see you later.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye-bye.